Thank you very much, Chairman Barletta. Indeed, I thank you for holding this hearing because I've had a long-term issue with independent leases apart from the expert agency that Congress said should do the leasing, and we've had some terrible mishaps when that was done, and people asked, essentially, agencies essentially acted like the world was theirs. So let's see if we can find the best opportunity for us, not an opportunity necessarily, not necessarily the best opportunity for the government. But in light of the fact that I have long been critical of independent agency, of agency independently doing their own leasing, Mr. Weiss, I was interested that you looked at 37 independent leases. It says selected independent leases, so I assume that they were randomly selected, and found comparable to or lower than the GSA rates. How do you account for that?
Mrs. Norton, thanks for the question. There could be any number of reasons for that. There are cases where they're looking at various properties that there may be less need of, they're willing to take property that with fewer tenant improvements than, say, a government property, or there could be a possibility that they'll take it as is, which means that they're willing to shoulder some of the burden themselves or not get involved in big expanded kind of improvements. And so that's certainly one reason why, you know, there could be somewhat lower rates, and depending on location can also make a difference. So there could be...
Some of these may have been opportunities that perhaps anybody could have seen, and the agency took advantage of them, and the kind of expertise that that GSA is purported to have might not have been necessary to see these opportunities.
Well, yes, but another possibility also that we learned in talking to GSA and others was that there are somewhat more stringent requirements in GSA-related leases that have to do with security, that have to do with things like seismic requirements that may not be relevant for the independent leasing authorities, or may not necessarily get engaged in those kinds of things. And from what we understood,
I would have thought security and all of that sort of thing was relevant for every leasing authority, particularly anywhere near the nation's capital, the national capital region.
Well, it can be, but they're at least according to the GSA officials, that the GSA standards can be somewhat higher for some of these things, depending on the type of building and the location, as well as the other sort of the environmental aspects of the building, like seismic and energy saving requirements and this sort of thing. So those were sort of the main reasons that we found in the course of our work, ma'am.
This question would be, I suppose, both for Mr. Wisner and Mr. Wise. I recall that there is, in fact, this is an ongoing event. There is going to be building taking place at the old soldiers' home here in the District of Columbia. I believe that the DOD wants that to take place as a way to support the soldiers' home and the soldiers who are there. And it's interesting that they reached out to GSA and essentially virtually gave GSA the authority. Now, this is DOD. Now, DOD does a great deal of construction of its own, but I believe recognizing that this construction was occurring in an urban neighborhood, they might have felt that GSA was the best actor in this case. So my question is, does GSA offer? Do agencies come to GSA to seek their advice, or shouldn't an agency which is not in the business of construction seek their advice and perhaps ask GSA to, in fact, do the construction or the leasing for them? I don't see the advantage to the government of the SEC saying we're going to build ourselves a building, for example, to name an agency that did that in recent years.
Yes, Ms. Norton, thank you for the question. GSA is happy to partner with our customer agencies and agencies that have their own leasing authority to provide expertise on market rates, to provide expertise on construction build-out and other things. I'm not familiar with the particular project that you're talking about because it is construction, but we are happy and willing to work with any agency out there on expertise. I would suggest that if we are using GSA authority, they must follow GSA regulations. We are the experts in real estate, and that's our core mission. So this is the job of GSA, or one of the jobs of GSA. We are happy to support other real estate programs or other leasing organizations. We're also happy to work.
Well, suppose, let me ask you
Yes,
this,
ma'am.
Commissioner Wiseman. Suppose an agency does have the authority. You know who they are. Is there guidance from GSA available to agencies who have their own leasing authority? Surely they could do with some advice, even if they don't ask for it.
There is not guidance to use GSA. However, there are leasing desk
No, I don't mean
guides.
you use GSA. I'm talking about agencies, none of whom are in the business of leasing or construction, who might not even think of GSA. All they think about is they have the authority, so let me go willy-nilly at it. If they had a piece of paper that said, well, let me see, let's see what the expert agency says is the way to approach this, wouldn't that be useful to agencies?
Yes, ma'am.
Who have such authority?
Available to the public and available online are all of
Say
our...
that again?
Available to the public and available online are all of our leasing desk guides and our pricing policy guidance. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I just want to say that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about leasing authority, the kinds of issues to look for, the issues that, for example, Mr. Wise said that some apparently found on their own and got comparable or rates that were even better. One more question, if I might. I had a roundtable last year because I have been concerned over a number of years with holdover and short-term leases, and there was if anything, a backlog of such leases. Actually, the GSA did a report. I thought it was an excellent report. It showed very substantial progress being made in the elimination of holdover leases, and a commitment to finding long-term solutions for all of the outstanding leases in this region, which is perhaps the most heavily leased region in the country, to find solutions to those, long-term solutions to those by September 30th, 2017. So, Assistant Commissioner Wisner, I'd like to ask you, are you on track to find long-term solutions? That means no short-term or holdover leases by September 30th of 2017, and what strategy are you using to avoid holdover or short-term leases in the future?
Thank you, Ms. Norton. So I'll address the facts to start off with. We have reduced the number of holdovers by at least 50% in our portfolio. We're down to around 50 holdovers total. That does vary. It goes up a bit, and every month we watch it diligently.
Is that where you expect it to be by this time, Mr. Wisner?
I expect it to be lower than that. The internal goal for holdovers is 0. So we do have puts and takes in that list. We calculate number of months in holdover, which is extremely critical for us. That being said, a short-term holdover, 1 or 2 months, to get us through a negotiation, as opposed to an 18-month holdover where we are at a standstill. We're focused on the long-term holdovers, the critical issues around that. So we are focused on that as a metric across our entire portfolio. As far as extensions, we have reduced the number of extensions that we have in place currently, and led by our commissioner. Every action that we have as far as an expiring lease will have a plan 3 years prior to its expiration, and we'll be reaching out to the customer agencies to put a replacement replacement competitive action in place for each of those projects that we are currently consider. We have increased the number of long-term solutions. I believe we are up to about 83% of all of our portfolio has long-term solutions in place or have long-term planning in place.
What does it mean, a long-term solution?
Long-term solutions means that we will have a competitive action that takes us to a new procurement that leads us to a longer-term solution in the market. So it may be a 5-year solution in some cases where we only want to occupy the space for 5 years. It may be a 10-year firm solution, or it may be even longer, up to the level of our scoring requirements, but not to exceed. So we have a very good plan in place, a very robust plan in place, and I'm happy to share the documents with you.
Does does the new footprint, the reduced footprint, help or hurt your timetable to get rid of short-term leasing?
No, ma'am. I think it actually helps us. We work with customer agencies, which can often be a protracted period of time to work on reducing the square footage, but overall we are reducing the amount of leases that we have in our portfolio. It has gone down. We've reduced the amount of square footage that we have in our portfolio. Now, that is reducing the stay-in-place option with customers. We must run a procurement. We must run a competitive procurement, and that oftentimes, with the new square footage reduction, drives us to new facilities or drives existing lessors to reduce the amount of square footage that they are offering to us. So it's not precluding staying in place, but there is a competitive action that drives down the square footage and potentially can drive down cost or at least control cost.
Thank you very much for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.